Were you tense? Were you a little nervous? You were. Come on, admit it. You're going, what's wrong with Bob? Or you weren't. I don't know what you're doing. I'm not a mind reader. Not that you know of. If I was a mind reader, would I tell you? Well, I'm feeling a big rubber circle off of my computer screen. Ladies and gentlemen, I think you know what that means. That's right, your applause says it all. It's the Bob Doyle Show. If you didn't believe me, well, you got to believe me now because there's people singing it. We got the dancers going. I don't know why I have to twist your arm to convince you every single time this is the Bob Doyle Show. But whatever, you know, I know that about you. I'm okay with it. You know, we can still keep our relationship. It's Monday, if you hadn't noticed. Why is there a rubber on my computer screen, Don? Really? That's where we're going to go? I didn't say it was a rubber. I said it was a rubber circle, and this sticks my phone. See, originally, my guest and I were going to connect on FaceTime, but guess what happens when you do that? An audio delay. And guess when we figured that out? 15 minutes ago. So guess who had to reset everything and start like all over setting up the show? Not my guest. That would be me. So that's what I've been doing, and that's why I was a little bit late. My coffee's gross and lukewarm. It's going to be a great day. So Carolyn is here, and Dawn and Sarah and Kathy. Now, where's everybody else? I'll tell you where everybody else is. They're sitting there not getting the notification that this show's gone on. 21,000 followers, 256 people reached. Mark Zuckerberg, can we have a conversation, just you and I? I'll tell you what, I'll even buy your coffee. Does he drink coffee? I don't know anything about Mark Zuckerberg. We haven't talked in ever. So, ladies and gentlemen, now here's the thing, what I know about this show. Most people are going to see this after the fact, all right? My guest and I are going to have this conversation. It's going to rock everyone's world. And then it's going to just spread the internet like wildfire. And then I don't know what's going to happen. What's going to happen is this. People from all over the country, entertainment, conglomerates are going to say, oh my God, there they are again, together again. We need to reunite this. We need to reunite this and make it something huge. But you know what? The thing is, you know what? We got our own paths. Who am I even talking about? Hi, Alberto. And Tommy's here as well. You know, this show used to be so harmless. You know, dancing girls, ukulele music, and now all it is just, and I know when it happened too. There's a certain couple of people who started watching the show on a regular basis, and then everything went to, well, where it is. They're giggling to themselves right now. I can hear them with my psychic ability. All right, look, so this show, I don't know. You know, this is a 30-minute show, but today, I don't know. It's up to my guest, really. But, you know, I could talk to this guy for quite a while, but let's just see what happens. So, a little backstory, just a little bit. So, a million years ago, or 30-ish, 91, 89. Let's start from the beginning. So, as you may or may not know, my whole goal in life was to use my voice, be on the radio, be funny, ah ha ha. Right? So, why not get into radio? So I got into radio in Athens. I did that in Athens, Georgia. Did my thing that I thought was hilarious, kind of like now. And then went to Atlanta, Georgia, the major market radio, and finally got a job there and was stuck on weekends doing boring stuff. Finally, they moved me over to the AM side. Does that sound exciting? To produce the morning show. Now, let me tell you about the Atlanta market on the AM side. This station that we worked for, which was WSB, AM 750, it was a 50,000 watt or 100,000 watt blowtorch, whatever. It was a lot of watts. And so, you know, it's been around since like, I don't know, 1910, 1922, a long, long time. And it was just kind of a staple. And what does that really mean? It's kind of an old person station after a while. Nothing against the elderly, but I'm just saying there was the FM side, you know, when FM hit, that's where all the cool people were. That's where all the music was played and all of that. And the AM side kind of turned into news talk, right? And what would happen is at least in our station, because it was Atlanta, it was a major market radio. We had some personalities, radio personalities, who were, pretty famous and cool in their day. But then, when it wasn't their day anymore and people stopped laughing at them, well, WSB hired them. So they took these DJs, I got two in mind in particular, who used to be all the rage, and gave them jobs to do talk or host a morning show or whatnot. So it was weird because they all kind of tried to bring their FM shtick a little bit over to the AM side, and sometimes it worked and most of the time it didn't, and it was just kind of weird. So I produced this morning show, which was kind of a news show. Well, at first it wasn't news. At first it was just like, hey, everybody gather around this morning, we're having coffee, kind of like the Bob Doyle Show, except, it was just different. And here's the thing I want to have about this conversation, and this is kind of a heads up to my guests as well. I kind of want to avoid mentioning names, specific names, just because, man, oh man, I don't know. I just don't want to go down that road. So I'd rather just talk about in generic terms, the host of this, the host of that, whatever. But long story short, I got really disenchanted with working on that morning show after a while. The personalities who were the hosts were very difficult people. Very difficult people. And it was very stressful for me. Well, sometime in the midst of all this guy shows up on our radio station. Now, we're going to talk about how that happened a little bit. But the point is that he just turned everything upside down. And it was jarring to the entire state and beyond. It's like, what's going on here? But it was one of these things that once people started to get what was going on, it became a real thing. And so I want to introduce you to this guy and then talk a little bit about how I got to work with him and then what we did. And number one, I just think it's interesting. It was quite a phenomenon. And it really does, my time with this guy really informed the way I do a lot of what I do on this show. So let's just hope to God that what I'm about to do works. And we're going to bring him on right here. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. David Paul.
Hey, Bob. Good to be here.
It's good to have you here. So thank you for doing this. So
you're exciting.
I'm glad. I'm glad you didn't like just walk off on me or do some shtick, because I could see you doing that, like not showing up. I can't do this. And then I'd be left hanging. And then you'd giggle to yourself.
Well, I only got 5 minutes.
Now, see, that's what I'm talking about. All right. So anyway, so David,
Bob,
just
can I ask you something? Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
When we were working together at WSB, did you have the secret? Did you have this secret then?
Oh, God, no.
Okay.
No.
So I was thinking we'd still be doing it today.
That's right. I would have secreted us into continuing that shtick. Well, but let's talk about a little bit, first of all, just some context as to how you even started working on the show, because you came from absolutely zero radio experience, right? You were just an enthusiast, right? A talk show enthusiast?
I had just moved up to Atlanta 4 months beforehand. I had never held a job in radio. I listened to WSB, and there were certain people I listened to, and they were the most boring people, old squirrels in the attic.
Hold on a second. Hold on a second, David. I'm getting a weird feedback here, and I'm trying to figure out why. What is happening? All right, hold on. What am I listening to? I've got this crazy feedback, and I don't know where it's coming from. But of course, it has to happen. All right. I have to figure out why we're getting this. I have to. Oh! I think I know. All right. So see, there you go. Broadcast. All right. Let's get back to the story with David Paul. Yes. Please start over. I apologize for that.
I had just.
It's my first day.
My ex-wife took a management job with the telephone company, so we moved up from Orlando. I listened to WSB, and I came from Orlando, which had a very exciting AM station. I listened to WSB, which it was just boring. It was just boring. So I called up. I asked to speak to the guy in charge. They connected me with the program director. And I just, in a 3-minute conversation, I just told him I could go out there and have a good time, make people laugh, and do something I think a little different. So he said, okay, we'll have lunch sometime. I'm thinking, oh, whatever. He took my number. He called me back 4 days later. He wanted me to sit in after a Braves game. Spent 4 years there. And then they gave me, soon after that, they gave me the Saturday night show. I did that for a few months. Then they gave me the all-night gig, which I loved.
Right. Now let's talk about that, because that overnight thing, that is when, the broadcast signal was its strongest. You were reaching many, many states. I mean, it was going all over the place. And here's the thing that people need to know about how talk shows run. There's the host, there's a board op, and then sometimes there's a producer, and sometimes the board op is the producer. Well, David didn't have any of that. He had him, and that's it. So he had to learn how to screen the calls, line up the calls while he's on the air. Like, just these gymnastics that you were doing with no experience was like very impressive, very impressive. And I think I had to do that a couple of times. I was put in that position. I'm going, I don't know how we did this with no experience. Now, how was that like for you to come in and people are showing you, here's how to do all this, and you're like, I don't know.
Well, they trained me over about a 3 or 4 week period of just how to, I had headsets, I could walk around, and you had carts back then. It wasn't a computer.
Right.
So I couldn't compare it to anything because I haven't done it. I never did anything before. So to me, it was normal.
Gotcha.
So on a break, and we had 9 phone lines coming in, and there were always 9 callers waiting to go on. So you, on a commercial break, hold on, and then you take the calls and you just go from there. And it was just, and I was a caller driven show. So I would let callers talk. And then while they're talking, I put myself on hold and I might answer another phone, put them on hold and just do what I did.
Right. And yet somehow you were able to maintain the conversation. You were like listening to people tell you what they wanted to talk about. And then, but here's the thing. Now, when you first started, I guess we need to say that, you weren't political. You weren't topical. You didn't talk about the news unless you made it up. Right. You came to the show with just these outrageous premises, basically. So how long did it take before the audience started understanding what was happening there?
I think pretty quick. I think my callers kind of walked on me. Just I could deliver a topic. I could start a topic of conversation at midnight, talk till 12:07. A caller would come on and I'd say, okay, Bob, you're up. And they'd say, I'd say, well, we're talking about. They say, yeah, whatever. And then they'd start talking about whatever they wanted to talk about. So the show could go in any direction. It was after midnight. So whatever you started with, 20 minutes later, who knows where you're going to be? Who knows? And an hour from that, who knows? Who knows?
So does this sound familiar to anyone who watches the Bob Doyle Show? Okay, please continue.
Well, that's when radio was entertaining. It's not, today it's persuasion. They don't even take callers anymore. I let's talk right on your callers. I wanted one continual caller after another caller.
Right.
That is what I wanted. If I didn't have callers, what was the point of doing it? And I wanted just one. They were the most important ingredient in the show, was the caller. Who cared what I had to say?
Right. And so, see, that is years later now, as I've started to do this show, I'm realizing that there's so much of what I do that I got from watching you back in that day. And the callers are the deal, right? You created a sense of community, and you had people who were absolutely just loyal, would listen every single night for hours. Your TSL, the time spent listening, was crazy, right? I mean, because they just would, and it was all night. People are working, and they just have you on.
Well, back then, WSB was not the number one station. WSB in the day parts they were like number 3, number 4. It depends. The only show they had that was number 1 was the Midnight Show, which was my show. That was number 1 in the Atlanta area. And it was because it was anti-talk radio. It was
right.
Whatever. We had weather watchers. I don't know if you know the nude weather watchers.
Oh my God, that's right.
But see, the guys loved this. It was crap, but it was just, we'd have young girls. I want to know what the weather's like, so they had to call up and disrobe and talk to you. And 20-degree weather, and they're right. Shaking and talking. The guys just ate this stuff up. Then we had Kim the Virgin, regular caller Kim the Virgin.
Oh, I don't remember. No, I don't remember Kim.
Catlin,
I remember Mark,
Catlin,
right?
Remember Catlin?
Yes.
Okay. They were hot. And I'd bring them down to the station and let them host the show. I'd put them behind the mic.
I know.
I'd take callers and just get out of the way.
It was amazing what they let you do. I mean, they really just sat back and watched this unfold. The program director at the time, he just really let you go, and the numbers just went crazy overnight. And
I had an FCC complaint. I didn't know about it. They didn't even tell me about it. And there was some fine or something that came through, and I didn't know about it till probably 2 months later. And then I heard about it.
The way that the whole thing about how you were introduced to the group set the tone for the whole thing, because
Right.
you just never knew, is this guy serious or not? You never knew. Like because the whole bit, your introduction was you had called, what the audience experienced was you calling one of the talk show hosts, getting into an argument, you making him so mad that he called you a name, an a-hole, but they said the word, and then he got suspended. This whole bit, the station perpetrated this whole bit to create outrage and, oh my God, this guy, and he called him this, and he was suspended, and then the next thing you know, you're on the air, right?
Mhm.
And so now it's, how long did you do the overnight thing?
A year or something like that. I'm just guessing something.
Right. So now you've dominated, and then they made that decision to move you to middays.
Not only that, when I did the midnight show, and I worked hard as far as coming up with the nonsense, just the pure stinking nonsense. They put me in the day part, and then that's where you came in, and then they wanted to meet with us every day. And what are you talking about today? And
Right.
and they were thinking, okay, I was going to bring those number one numbers to the afternoon, but if you want number one numbers, get out of the way. Just leave us alone. And then when we did our own thing, it was good, but just keep your opinion out of it.
Well, the other thing is that the people that we replaced, or the guy that we replaced, had been a staple forever. Now, his name was Ludlow Porch, and he had an audience that was just famously senior citizens, basically, right? And to replace him when he moved on with you was like the most outrageous opposite. I mean, you were a person who was known for ruffling feathers, for getting people outrageous and nude weather watching, all this stuff. And when we moved that show into that day part, oh my God, the places. Oh, hold on a second, we got somebody here who knows. This is Tommy. I loved it when nobody called in and you get your feeling hurt and get under the desk. Yeah, the whole thing about you being like this really vulnerable, like you would go down these roads of, I don't know, you showed all of this emotion. It was so different. But anyway, back to the Ludlow thing. There was such ruffled feathers, but then we had to force a new audience in there, right?
And Ludlow couldn't stand me either. And the girl in the morning, she hated me. I mean, these were some of the meanest people I ever met in my life. When I went to the morning daytime bar, I was scared. I didn't like. It was horrible. Meanest people. You knew who I'm talking about. Some of these people.
Absolutely.
And they weren't kidding.
Right. They did not get the joke. And I also have said that when you first came in, I think I was just kind of under the spell of everybody else, right? And I was like, yeah, this guy. I mean, I just had such a visceral dislike for what you were doing, even though I didn't really understand it. But there was the turning point, which is a famous story. And guys, by the way, if you Google David Paul, you're going to see lots of crazy stuff. But here's what you're going to see is that today people still talk about that show from almost 30 years ago. Where is David Paul? What's he doing? And there's just like all this urban legend too around you. It's pretty crazy.
What got me, I was the all night guy, and I was leading a very happy life being the all night guy. I mean, I really enjoyed the all night. I had no boss.
Yeah.
What got me to the afternoon, I think, is the people of the morning crew. And this was a legendary guy. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah.
I mean, he was one of the hottest things in Atlanta. Super, super well known, and I insulted his co-host. You know what I'm talking about?
You sure did.
I insulted her, but she insulted me. She
right.
really
constantly. She was relentless. Yeah.
I mean, and that stuff bothered me. It bothered me. So I insulted her. Caller said something, so I insulted her, then she called me that morning about 10 o'clock, and she said, "You better start looking under your hood."
Yeah,
And
it got really weird.
She told me one of the other co-hosts carried a gun, and this is well, to make a long story short, her co-host walked in the studio one morning. He meet me, told me to meet me. I said, "Well, I go home at 6. I go home at 6 or 5, what it was."
5, yep.
Yeah, so he came in and he just wouldn't shut up, but I'm doing my show. And so I called him. I said, "Leave me alone, has been."
Yep.
Next thing you know, a fist comes right at like 4 times on the side of my face. Bam, bam. And then the football player, Jeff Van Note, pulled him off me.
And I was standing there.
That got me in the newspaper 2 days in a row in the front Atlanta Journal. That got me to the afternoon show.
It did. That changed everything for me too. Because I was standing right there when that happened, and I was like in this state of shock, like, oh my God. Yeah, it just like, and I, he got pulled off, and it just reset the whole thing for me. It was like, who are these people that I'm working with, right? and it really just, it changed my whole opinion. And then, cutting to when they decided to take you out of overnights and put you in the morning, they asked me to produce your show because they knew I wanted to do creative stuff, and I was just kind of withering on the vine producing a morning show. And then somehow also, so when I first started with you, I was just a board op. I wasn't anybody. I mean, I was just running the board, and you had a producer who screened the calls who was Melanie, and I wish, if I could find her. Do you know anything about her whereabouts?
I talked to her last time 3 or 4 years ago, and she was working on a farm, working with horses.
Wow. Well, anyway, it was this really, you guys had a great chemistry, and then one day
she was a caller. She was a caller.
Yes, and that's right. She was a caller, and the station hired her.
Mm-hmm.
It was just this really bizarre series of events that I don't think could happen today. But
they won't allow it to happen today. Today it's radio hobos. If a guy loses his job in Atlanta today because the numbers aren't there, they're going to find somebody in Cincinnati or somebody in Orlando or somewhere that barely got by. They got fired from there, and they're going to bring them up. They're hobos, radio hobos, who talk about front page issues.
So one day I think we just needed a character for one of the bits, because again, David would come on and he'd create a premise that was just outrageous. For example, he would come on and he'd just make up stuff. What did I do? And this one thing, I remember several of them, but we had a perimeter 285, basically a stretch of road that went around the city. And David's premise was that all of this traffic activity was causing this electromagnetic field that I don't remember what it did, but that's the general idea. So we would come up with these premises, and every now and then we need a character, like a voice to call in and be somebody. And I did that a few times, and then one day we started with Big John Worley was this character that needed to be done.
That was the Saturday character.
Saturday. That's right. That's right. So when I was his producer on Saturdays, when we would beg for food, we would actually get on the radio and beg restaurants to bring us food, and they did. And they did.
Big old trays of barbecue ribs, and that was just good stuff, man.
Right. But we for whatever reason, so Big John talked like this, and he was just he had a whole backstory and all of that. But I always found Big John pretty boring, and then one time we had to do a live remote at Bimbo's. That was the name of the bar. And that back then, by the way, David had long brown hair. He was kind of a hippie kind of looking guy. I don't know how to describe it, but definitely different than the Colonel Sanders thing we have going now. But
I always remember at the mall, you threw a grapefruit or something across the mall. The big old thing, there was a big old open area. You know how you look down? Well, I don't know what it was, but you took you hauled it across like the Macy's or something.
I don't remember that. That doesn't sound like me at all.
I remember that, Bob. I always remember that. You picked it up, it was like a grape, and hauled it. And I think, oh my gosh, Bob, what have you,
I don't know. Well, I guess Big John took over.
Yeah,
but I was telling the story. So we had to do this live remote. So now Big John had to be a real person. Yeah. So yeah. we got hooked up with like some Western wear company, and they got me a cowboy hat and boots and belt buckle and the whole thing. But then I had to go be live. I wasn't even part of the bit. I just was standing around, but I had to talk to people like that the whole time. Anyway, as soon after that, we needed a different character. and this character talked like this. Now, we never said anything
That was
specific
great. That was a great
about
kid.
his orientation. He just happened to talk like this. And so, and a direct opposite of Big John Worley, right? Big John talked like this. He would not like Jules, who talked like this. Well, the Jules character really stuck,
That was a good
and
character.
and it was and the chemistry between Jules and David and Melanie, because Melanie and Jules were kind of like a team, sort of against, not against, but you know that there was that.
The
Like
adults in the room.
we related, right? We related, and that's right. We would always sort of balance out. Come on, David, that's just ridiculous.
Right.
So now Jules, I'm just to fast forward, he never made a live appearance and never would. There was no way I was going to go out and be Jules somewhere. So Jules always had some excuse for not going to live things. There was
Well,
always
Jules was always successful. Jules had like salons out. You know what I mean?
oh
Jules,
yeah, that's right. Jules had a whole other thing going. I
and,
totally
and,
forgot about that.
and then you'd like, well, what do you do, Dave? Well, not much, Bob. You know, it's like my life was just, but you were always very successful in the out. You know.
So I've shared a little bit about when there were two things that really stick out in my mind. One was the gay and lesbian parade that we were commenting on, but we weren't there. I don't even know if there really was one, but I had all the sound effects of a parade and had wind sound effects going across the microphone like we were outside, and just making all this commentary. And it was just the perfect scenario for that dynamic, the Melanie, Jules, and David, because there was we were never mean spirited. We never made it was all just super harmless,
Right.
but you could read so much into it, like if you wanted to. You know, it's like the things that Dave would, like Jules would say, oh, I know that guy, you're right? So that just could imply a million things. But we never said anything directly about anything, and we weren't mean-spirited. But the crown jewel of the whole thing was the Princess Diana bit. And that got press because the whole idea was that you wanted to get Princess Diana on. Now, obviously, this is when she was alive.
So behind the scenes on the radio, we're thinking this out. We're thinking, how do we get Princess Di on the phone? This is what we're doing. Instead of taking callers, we're all just huddling together. There must be something we can do. And then we came up with this.
Right, this whole idea. And we actually called Buckingham Palace once. We actually did make that call. We got permission to do it. And of course, as soon as I said, can I speak to Lady Di, or whatever, maybe you did. I don't remember who made the first initial thing. Anyway, they hung up on us and that was it. So then we had to calculate, okay, how do we keep this bit going? And how can we get him? So on the air now, we're strategizing. Now it becomes a part of the show. How do we get her on the phone? How do we get her on the phone? We came up with the scenario that Jules was a dressmaker, and he had to ask her a question about some dress she was going to wear.
A skull.
A skull?
A skull. What do you call that? A skull or something? The hemline? Melody, I think, came up with that.
That's right. She had all the terminology, right? And she told me,
you wanted to know something about the skull or something, and so you had to ask her when you're making this dress the very specific question.
Right. And again, this is all on the air. So the audience is listening to us strategize about how are we going to get her on the phone. Okay, well, I'll be this and you say this and da, da, da. And so long story short, we got to one point where the position now had to be that for legal reasons, I couldn't share the phone, their end of the conversation. So all you ever heard was Jules. So now I had to really act it up. So you just heard my end of the conversation, and I somehow worked my way through. I BS'd everybody to get, now of course this didn't happen, but this was the illusion that, you know, I'm doing the whole thing. Yes, I designed the dress, and yeah, well, I need to, it's very important. So I finally get to her, and now David's like, put her on. And I'm like, I can't, David, I can't, you know. So I'm having this conversation with Princess Di, and I'm all flustered and just in awe, and she's so nice, and da-da-da. And then I hang up, and now you're furious because I didn't put her on the phone, right? Now, this is all the bit. You know, I can't believe you had her on the phone. David, I couldn't do it. We would have gotten in trouble. You know, that whole thing. So now, right after the show's done, the newspaper, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, who is in the same building and could have easily walked by the studio at any time and saw that that's just Bob Doyle sitting there, wanted to call to talk. I don't know. They interviewed Jules. They wanted to interview Jules about his conversation with Princess Diana. And I'm like going, are you freaking serious? I have to do an interview now it was a phone interview. They didn't even come look for me. And they're asking me, you know, Jules, what's your last name? I had no last name at this point. He was just this character named Jules. Pam Martin, who was a news anchor at the TV station, walked by just at that moment, so I stole her last name, and I was Jules Martin. And they ended up printing this article about, but it was all still like, did it really happen? We don't know because it's David Paul, but it made press, and that was just like my proudest radio moment ever, that I actually had to do this interview as this non-existent character for a newspaper that was right there. Talk about non-fact checking. Jeez Louise, right? I think Jeez Louise I got from you. That sound, I think I've been saying that for years, and I think that came from you. But anyway, so yeah, that kind of stuff was just like the best time in radio ever.
And you know, but it's and I love doing it. But it's not easy coming up with that stuff every day either.
Tell me about it. I do a show every day now, right? So
it is not. It is, and we had a lot of that stuff. Another one I remember you did, which were very good. You remember Brian at the hospital? This is Brian, housekeeping Brian.
Oh my God, it's coming back to me, but I don't remember the exact.
My aunt was in the hospital and she was dying. She was in a coma. The hospital's keeping her alive. They're keeping her on the machines, and well, I'm her favorite nephew, and I'm going to get all her stuff, and I want them to pull the plug.
Oh, right.
And
when you're trying to get Brian to pull the plug, right?
Because so I called the doctor, and you're the doctor also. I called the doctor. Doctor, I'm her favorite nephew, and I want to go ahead and make the decision. Let's pull the plug. Let's just go ahead and pull the plug. And you're the doctor, and what you do, you just can't, and you know, so that didn't go anywhere. So then we huddled again, you know, we did what we did. And then you were Brian in housekeeping. And I wanted housekeeping because it was an electrical problem to pull the plug. And we did that. And this was just, and we did that. I always remember that. I thought, God, that was good stuff. You know, trying to pull.
So this is my question like years later now, because you had your overnight thing down to an art, really, and now you're being asked to kind of do something else and play with other people. How long before you felt, if ever, really comfortable with, okay, I got a team now and we're doing it this way? Or were you always just like, God, I wish I could just go back to what I was doing?
No, I don't think I ever. No, because I mean, it worked. And y'all were, I mean, you were characters, which I didn't have before. I didn't have that when I was all night. I didn't have it. You know what I mean?
Well, I think it was
when you left. I mean, you ended up quitting. You ended up leaving. I don't remember why you left, but I mean that bothered me for a while. I didn't want you leaving. I didn't want you going anywhere. I needed that. I needed it.
Yeah, that's right. Did Royal come in after me? Who came in and
I worked with Royal temporarily at night. I was his first guy I worked, first person he produced for. When he came over from he worked at V. Yes,
I remember now. But yes, I did. I left because I was just like time for a career change or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, and so and then the show went on for how much longer? Do you remember?
They put me at 10 o'clock, and then it started just falling apart. And they gave me a contract, and I wouldn't sign their contract.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the heck it was. But then I was gone. It was that quick. But I didn't sign the contract. They gave it to me, and they gave me 3 days, and I decided. I think another thing too, I was just getting kind of tired. I was just you know what I mean? It was just afternoon. It lost the thrill, and it was just time to go.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I think the way that it happened and the way that it left, it created this almost urban legend stuff. And because you created such, like, nobody knew what the hell was true about you, right? I mean, you'd hear rumors all over the place. You can find them on the internet all over. Oh, I think he did this, or he did this, or he did this. And to this day, I'm not even clear what really happened. And I'm happy to not know. I'm happy to still be a little bit baffled.
I think it was ego on my part a little bit. You know what I mean? I thought I was, you know, and I don't know, but it ended. But it was fun. I had a really good time, and I don't look at it as it was nothing but fun. For the most part, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, when you're working daytime with everybody else in management, and just like you said, all the meetings, I mean, that'll just suck the life right out of you,
Dude,
slowly but surely, yeah. But
every day it was every day, every morning.
but I think what especially now that I'm doing this show in the way that I'm doing it, what I had heard, because I had grown up in Atlanta, and all I'd heard is that FM shtick, and all that, and I thought that's what funny radio was until my friend Rob um, introduced me to some of the stuff that was going on in Chicago, right? Steve and Gary and stuff like this, and I'm like, wow, that's a totally different type of talk radio. There's other ways to do
Yes,
this,
yes,
and so when you started doing your stuff, and once I finally got it, that was like you sort of just opened the door for giving me years later permission to just do it however the freak I want, right? It's just like talk to the people, break all the rules, just have permission, and the crash and burn. If something would go wrong on the show, instead of trying to pretend that it didn't happen, we would just go with it, right? It just became it was odd because we were so full of crap, and it was some of the most honest radio out there.
yeah. Well, we all had bad attitude. I mean, we just did what we wanted to do. We literally did what we wanted to do,
And they let us do it.
and they let us do it.
I will say, I remember that one of the things they made me do, which I thought was just awful and didn't fit the show at all, was they had subscribed to ACN, which is the American Comedy Network, which basically you're subscribing for pre-produced bits that somebody else thinks is funny, and they made us drop this FM morning humor type stuff into our show, which was completely different. It was so jarring.
I remember that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
remember. Yeah.
It's like why are we're doing this type of radio, and that's when like you really saw management trying to put their fingers in it. Oh, this will be funny. This will be funny. No, it's not
Well,
funny.
the program directors, they got rid of him pretty quick. I mean, he didn't last. The guy that came up with all this stuff didn't. Of course, I'm not sure how much he said. I'm not sure how much, the GM. I don't know.
The way that it worked over there, as you know, it was like everything trickled down. I don't
Everything.
think anybody could make any decisions except for the one guy at the top, right?
That's
And
I'm one. Okay, yeah.
yeah, and he liked your shtick, obviously, for a while, and let it go, and then it just got well, let's tinker with it and tinker with it and tinker with it. And yeah, when we had to start doing the pre-produced bits, I was like, this is, you're really poisoning the show with this nonsense. So now the questions are, what is David doing now? But let's talk about real quick, like after you left WSB,
Hmm.
I think, and we don't need to get through we don't need to all your job history, but you did a series of other things. You found yourself in radio for a while.
Yeah, and then I did a little bitty station, a little bitty rate, which I really enjoyed. And I met a guy that I'm still in friends with to this day. Some adult clubs wanted me to do some DJ work, and I did that. Got into a little bit of a couple years of pornography. Um, then
Right.
stuff like that. I mean, I just did what I did. What I got into that I really benefited from after I got the radio was selling. I'd
Mhm.
never selling, and it started by selling new cars. I learned how to sell, and it's like right now doing what you do. If you can sell, you can do whatever your mind can conjure up.
Well,
That is what I benefit. And then I went to work for another radio station, which I'm up here in Cartersville now, and I'm 11 years ago I moved here, and I moved the radio station on and off. Like I worked there like 8 years, but they only paid me for 3 years. The other, I went out and sold. I worked a deal with them. I'll do your morning show, but I get 50% of all the advertising. So I sold all the advertising. That to me was a good deal. That was a good deal. You don't have to pay me. In a lot of stations, they don't have money. You don't have to pay me. Don't pay me anything. Pay me nothing. I'll sell. That's
Well,
the prime ingredient.
well, see, and now in retrospect, you every time you went on the air, you had to sell. You had to sell the premise. You had to sell the concept. You had to sell act. This was such an acting job. I mean,
That's all you're doing. That's all you're doing.
but not everybody can do it. I mean, if people would try to do your shtick, it would and not be able to do it. Oh, it'd be so terrible. It would be so terrible. You had this. There's probably something to do with just your accent and everything that you didn't know. Like here's the other one that really stuck out. You did a show one time, and I don't remember what about it, but you kept referring to the Sphinx as the Sphinx, right? One of those things that would just irritate the crap out of people, right? It was like, it's not Sphinx. Why is he saying Sphinx, right? And you knew what you were doing, but you played it the whole time, and so it would just irritate people. And I don't think to this day I could pull that off, because it would bother me to think that people thought that I didn't know that it was Sphinx and not Sphinx. But every time you said Sphinx, it was just so freaking hilarious to me, because I knew that there were people out there going, oh, why is he, who didn't get it. But that was the complete detachment from what people thought. I don't know. There was a certain amount of bravery around that.
I think like midnight, I was not the smartest person in the room. Okay. And when people called me, they were always challenging me, because I did not come across as this, typical talk show host with all the answers.
Yeah.
And I think that made me less threatening, where they'd want to challenge me. They'd want to take me on, because I was just very ordinary, just an opinionated guy that was wrong half the time,
Yeah, and even though you're especially, I think there was a certain amount of the persona that seemed at first, especially the way that you came on board, was kind of almost accosting, like you were almost going after things. That mellowed out into something else. I mean, you would still get passionate about your things. You would still, have those. But generally speaking, you came across as a really likable guy to the people who got it.
But I was a jerk too. I mean, I was a jerk, and but that was intentional. I don't know if the afternoon as much, but at midnight, I was rude.
Right.
I mean, I'd call people, "You're a moron."
Moron.
You're a moron. And then I'd have 9 callers lined up, and these people are waiting 45 minutes to talk to me.
Yeah.
45 minutes. And then I'd say, this is loser hour. There's nothing but losers. I mean, I want somebody. And then I'd intentionally hang up on every single one of the 9 callers who've been waiting, and immediately 9 more people. I said, it's loser hour. Get these losers out of here. You make,
right.
You make me look bad.
So, and all those people became part of the show. So it was like, I'm sure there were people who never, ever, ever called you, but just listened all the time to hear you do that to people, to use these callers in that way, to create an experience for the people who got it. And then of course there were the people like the Marks and the Melanies who so got it. And Mark was unique in that his shtick, if you will, he was a regular caller, he was a young guy, and he always challenged you. He was the one who would come on and call you the idiot, and you like really spar with you on that.
Mark was, like, say, a 20-year-old kid. Bright guy, just bright, and a nerd. I mean, a nerd, but a bright guy. But he had the hotline to the studio. So if somebody's just giving me a hard time, we're going back and forth, and the hotline would be ringing, and I let the caller talk, and I talk to, he goes, hey man, put me on. I said, okay, whatever. So I'd put him on, and he'd start going after the caller, and he would do this. And he just anytime, I had the sexiest sounding female from Montana calling me. I mean, this girl was she sent me a picture. I mean, she was like 27 years old. I mean, she was beautiful. So Mark used to come down to the station. I'd have Mark come down, and I'd show Mark the picture. Mark started calling. Whenever she called, he'd call in. Flew up there and stayed with her.
Oh,
and he went and stayed with her a couple of days. They talked on the phone, and let me tell you, the girl gave him some memories. Mark came back, and Mark's in love. He's in love. He's ready to marry her. I mean, he really. So then I'm talking to her, and what happened? Just, I had a real good time. And then he calls in, and he starts pouring himself out, and she's just slowly bringing him back down. But that was the midnight show. It was a soap opera, but Mark was really, he loved this girl. It was like his first, female. And it was.
But yeah, the whole inclusion of the audience is part of it. And I, obviously I've got Sarah and Dawn and these people who are always here, and the show just wouldn't be the same without that, right? Without that sense of community, like we all know each other. And you had, that station had, somebody asked earlier how many listeners. I mean, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands. When that thing was on at night, the reach was so huge. And you were up against what, like Art Bell and that kind of stuff?
Yeah. Well, they took off Tom Snyder. Was it? No, not Tom Snyder. the other guy? I can't think of the other guy. They give me that slider. Oh yeah, but yeah, there was nothing. Everybody else was ordinary, doing the exact same thing. They were all doing the exact, more or less, same thing.
Or, yeah, syndicated stuff basically. There wasn't anybody doing.
I was different. I was just, and also the cab drivers, the police officers, and they just listened to me to stay awake. You know, I'm the background. Plus, I had the sexiest women in the city of Atlanta. Listen, you know,
I was just about to say that. I was just about to say that because you know, those girls, those women who would just like, I don't know whether they felt like you were harmless, fun, or what it was, but I mean, it was crazy. I remember one morning, oh my God, you probably remember this. We were doing a Saturday, and we brought a couple of these girls in to be on the show, and the shtick was that who it was?
Catlin, one of them, yeah.
Now at this point, this was before I was Big John or Jules. I was still Bob Doyle, and that was the problem here. Because there was this whole bit going on that one of those girls was like flirting with me. Well, I was married at the time, and this was not flying with my wife at all. And she called a couple of times and said, "Hey, this isn't funny. You need to stop doing this. There's people listening." And I'm like, "Okay, I get it." But then they did it one more time. You know, I didn't have any control over what these women were saying, but they did some sort of flirty thing with me, and oh my God. Man, oh man. And that was when it was like, it's time to change Bob Doyle into something else. Maybe that's why we did it, so that I had a little bit more freedom to play and all that. Because she wasn't mad that we were pretending stuff, but just not my name on it, right? And I can get that.
Right. I understand that.
It was pretty bad judgment, I guess, on my part to let that happen. But that was a big wake up call in terms of like, where do we draw the line? But then having the characters, then I had absolute freedom. Right, then I could do whatever, and especially when there's nothing. I mean, Jules was bulletproof.
He was a great character. Jules, yeah.
And we maintained the secrecy of Jules for a really long time.
Well, Jules was just, and we never. There was, like you say, Jules. We never. There was never any comment about Jules' family life or anything. Nothing. It was just Jules was Jules.
Right. It was everything. I mean? Everything was so implied, and that gave us so much freedom. So much freedom that he was ambiguous, but probably, right? And when we did the Pride Parade thing, still, there was nothing that basically said anything. And so it was truly just this, the chemistry there was really, really rare of those characters. And somebody made some comment, it's just like, no, people say he's a nice guy in real life. No, the jerk, that's the real David and all this. I'm like...
You know, I always remember that because that was in a newspaper article. They said the act, because they didn't know what was real, wasn't real. They said the act was when he was a nice guy. That was the act. And I'm thinking, God, what the heck was it? You know, I'd like to know who said that. But
yeah, I know. It was supposed to be somebody at the station.
I still remember that.
Yeah, that's because that was so completely wrong. And that was like such like... It's just the kind of crap that goes on today, right? It's just like, you'll say it in print and, you know, say it, whatever. But anyone who really knew you knew that wasn't the truth. But again, there's so much out there. There's so much out there around you that it's just like, you kind of have to throw your hands up and go, just whatever. I like him. I don't. I wish I could hear him, whatever. So when we were talking the other day, I was asking you, you know, because now you're doing Cartersville Uncut, which is kind of interviews of businesses in Cartersville, and, you know, you're doing video stuff and interviewing people. And I was asking you if you're, you know, do you get to do your shtick anymore? And you said no, because, you know, you're selling advertising for real businesses and things like that.
On my Facebook page, I do weird, you know, like stuff. If you look at my top post I've got on my page today, if you look at, I'll do weird makeup stuff, and people see right through it. But as far as, no, I'm a legit business now. As far as, I got a video where I go to all the events and I have advertisers, and no. So I mean, it's a laid back thing, but it works. It's a business that actually works, and, you know, takes care of me and stuff like this. And, you know, so I like it. I really enjoy it. So, you know what I mean? So you just want to blend in, but everybody knows me. All the advertisers know me from WSB. Most of them, you know, listened when I was at WSB. So they know what I did. They
know what you're capable of. They just don't want you to do it right now.
Do you know, let me tell you another story about up here. You know, I've been in Cartersville, which is a little bitty city, 20,000, 100,000 in the county. the reason I'm up here is I got a phone call at the beginning of 2007 from Mark. Mark's buddy was the banker who owned the little radio station in Cartersville. And Mark said, would you be interested in getting back into radio? I said, yeah, I'm open. So then the owners of the station called me a couple days later after Mark checked me out. So Mark's the original call I got before I moved up here. Mark helped me get this gig. Mark's the one that thought about me, but then the owners station, they knew me from WSB. They knew me.
Now, I'm pretty sure that at one point when you were doing the radio show, Jules called in. I think we had a conversation.
Yeah. In Cartersville?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
We had one brief conversation, I'm pretty sure, as Jules, and I can't remember what I said Jules was doing. It was just a brief little, like, blast from the past conversation that we did as a bit. I don't remember it, but now today. So of course I keep thinking that, you know, we've got the internet. It's like you could at any time do this again. I mean, you've got basically the internet is your own radio station. You can do whatever you want.
Bob, I do a cable show like right now. It's almost 1 million homes all throughout Atlanta is what I do, and it's I conjured it up in my own head and I do it, and I love it. It pays my bills. You're the one that has the know-how to take it to that level. I don't. I wouldn't know how to do that. I wouldn't. You're the computer guy. You're the genius as far as on that end.
You just need to find a producer, somebody to push the buttons for you, just like before. Yeah. Where you can just do your shtick. And you know, I hope you do. I hope you find that outlet somewhere, because I really feel like, you know, a lot of people said, a lot of comments that you were just ahead of your time. Certainly in that market. You were, I mean, the Atlanta market was just not ready. I mean, it's a Bible Belt area, so anytime you kind of step on people's values or challenge them, they're going to scream. And of course, we had to convert that whole, you know, audience into younger folks or whatever. And you know, you were fighting quite a battle during that particular day part. But I think today, if you ran the same stuff, the same topics, all that, it would still work like it did before, because people would get it. You'd find your audience. The same. I really think the same topics. I wish I could remember, but I mean, there must have been hundreds of topics. I mean, I've got the few that stick out of my mind, but
you know, I've got a catalog of every one of them.
Well,
I wrote them down. I get daily diaries, and I wrote them down. So I've got them in my closet. I've got these little. I wrote them down, what we did that day.
Oh my God, that's so great to know. I would love to see that. That's like gold. And give me some.
Yeah, I wrote them down just because I needed, you know, because especially all night, you just thinking, oh my gosh, I'm dead. I don't have a clue. I have no clue, because you know I couldn't use the newspaper. So I'd go back and say, what did I do 6 months ago? And I'd look at it and just hopefully just get something going. And then I might twist it and do something similar. And that's, unique.
Yeah, and that is the nice thing about all those topics, is because you could do them anytime, because they weren't around the news. They weren't around current events. They were more around, like, you know, just either these weird scenarios, or you'd ask kind of like, what would you do type of questions, or that kind of thing. Like put people into like they'd have to answer these value. I don't know how, I'm not finding the right words, but you know, and just the polarization of the audience and the responses and all of that stuff. It was great stuff. I wish it was all archived somewhere. I mean, we had cassettes for the longest time.
You know, I had a. What about you, Bob? Can I ask you, where are you going? What direction? I mean, you just picked up and moved to Las Vegas. I mean, that's pretty,
I know.
I mean, majority of people don't do stuff like that. They live in the same home for 30, 40 years. They live in the same city. You pick up.
Well, first I picked up and moved from Atlanta to LA after my divorce. And so I was there for 5 years. And then when the relationship I had in Los Angeles has transitioned, then it was like, well, where do I go? What do I do? And I was looking at California for a while, and then the idea of Vegas was brought up, and I was categorically, no way, it's too hot. And I got through that and started thinking about, well, who do I know, and then who do they know? And what's going on in Vegas? You know, there's entertainment, there's events, like everything that I do, whether it's teaching law of attraction stuff or just being this goof on this show, doing voice stuff. I mean, there's just lots of opportunity out here. So I don't, you know, to where I'm going, honestly, I think most people who watch this show know that this right here is my super passion. But, you know, I can't just stay on Facebook, and because especially like with the reach and all that's just goofy. So I look at this show as you know, just keeping the sharpening the tools, right? Learning how to maintain 30 minutes or an hour or whatever, and how to handle crash and burns, and interacting with audience, and building community, all that stuff that you did. I mean, the more that I thought about it as we were talking about doing this conversation, it's so much like what you did. I'm running everything myself, handling it when things melt down, and just going with it and all of that. And there was what I took from you was this, like, you don't have to take it so freaking seriously. You know, just have fun with it. Be honest in the moment. And then they'll be with you. They'll be with you. And if you get all self-conscious and weird about it, then they're like, oh, well, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. But if you can ride the wave, right, I think that's a great skill set. And that was something that I thought you always just did brilliantly with no radio experience.
Well, people used to tell me, they say, you were the first and the last that will ever walk into a 50,000 watt station and get it. It's just not going to happen.
That's correct. There's no way that can happen. It was a freaking miracle that it did. Yeah, I can't remember what they were playing overnights either at that point. Probably replays of day shows.
Larry King.
Oh, did they play Larry King over there?
I think it was Larry King. He had an all-night radio show. Not there, I mean, syndicated show.
Yeah, but, no, right.
Because temporarily, when I came in, they had a contract, and they had to still play his commercials while I was in there.
I didn't remember that he was part of that.
I'm pretty sure it was Larry King.
But anyway, yeah. So they just took the risk to replace it with something live, and it just really, really worked for a while. So the whole span of the career there was what? What year?
Like almost 4 years. Almost like 3 years and 10 months, something like that.
So really, like a blip on the radar of radio history, and yet still people ask, where's David Paul? What is David Paul doing? Whatever happened to David Paul? That show, I love that show. Oh, that guy was a jerk. Whatever. It's so funny to see the polarization to this day. You know, it's like you're the Napoleon Dynamite of radio. It's like you either love this guy or you just don't. Why could anybody ever? And I experienced the whole range. And I think it was just about getting it. It was just about getting it, like getting the bit and going, oh, I see, you can do this. Like, this is okay. Let's just play. And they gave you that playground, which that's the rare thing. Like, just no way would that happen today.
And that's over. People don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
That's over. Unless you can find a little bitty station. But guys now are doing like what you're doing. They're doing it like Eric here in town, who's got the at WSB. He's doing like exactly what you did. He's got his little group around him, and that does a show like every day. He did it online and built up an audience, and then he, went after WSB, and they gave him a job. But he did exactly what you're doing, And they had another guy in Tennessee who did the same thing. He couldn't get a job, so he did what you did. Not only that, he went to a station and bought airtime to go on, and then now he's at 106.7 in Atlanta. So I mean, nowadays you can't sit back and wait. You got to make it happen.
Yeah, and so and I think just doing the show, this is like a constant potential audition for anyone. Just do it. Just put yourself out there, and you never know who's going to see you do it. But I would never like go chase down. Like I don't want to get back on radio, right? Why would I do that? Why would I ever want to be hired and be told what to do on this show? And that's always going to happen.
I'd have a hard time doing that too. Also, let's say Cincinnati or Ohio says, "Hey, Dave, we want you. We're going to put you midnight. We're going to give you $150,000 a year." But for me to pick up and not know a soul and move to anywhere, there's nothing appealing about that at all. There's just nothing. And start over and just not have any friends there. And no, why would I want to do that? Why would I would rather make 1/5 as much and be happy. And I like doing what I'm doing. I really enjoy doing it.
Right. And truly, man, you have a place in radio history. WSB it's one of the most, well, maybe not today, but it certainly holds a very revered place in history. So there's a lot of broadcasters, it's a big deal to have any sort of like, because there's so many people who came in and out of there that no one even talks about or would ever even remember. right? But you had that short period of time there, and it will never be forgotten because it was just so not like anything WSB ever did and probably will do, based on what's happening now, which I guess it's mostly they got the morning show and then it's all syndicated for the most part, I think. I don't know.
They're number one. They're number one in the ratings. I mean, WSB is number one all day long. They're the hottest station in town, and they bring in the men, but it's all just one conservative talk, and that's their thing, and that's what, Sean Hannity, Rush Limbaugh, number one. And to me, there's nothing entertaining about that at all.
Yeah,
and they don't take callers. These people don't take callers.
Well, there's so many other choices for the people who really love talk radio and the interaction and originality and don't want to be burdened with all the political crap. There's way more options in podcasts and things like that now online. Internet. Why would I just don't listen to the radio anymore. I mean, because what's the point? I can listen to whatever music I want on the internet. I can listen to whatever talk I want on the internet, and I can watch you in the morning. I can do that. Yeah, that's what I can do. That's right, and that's what everybody should do. Tommy, thanks for hanging out with us. Tommy was a listener, was one of your listeners in Atlanta. He says he never called,
hey,
but
Tommy.
he did. But he was a listener. All right, well, we did an hour and then some, David.
Woo! Had a good time.
So thanks for doing this. I'm really glad that you were. I've been wanting to do it for literally a really long time, but then when you showed up on the show the other day, I just jumped at the chance to have this conversation. And yeah, we could sit here and talk about different things for the longest time. I would love to see some of those topics just to remember that. And you know what? Maybe one of these days we can do something again.
Sounds good, Bob. Well, I appreciate you having me on here, Bob. But Bob, you're an artist, Bob. You're a creative guy. Well, I mean, you really, and it's all, you can do whatever you want to do. So you need to come up with some outlet on here that reaches the globe. And you know what I mean? And just, you were just in a hot movie and stuff. Just do it, Bob.
Quit talking about it and do it. That's another David Paul line. It's good to know that you still got all that vocabulary going.
Yeah, just do it. Then tell me, let me be part of it, and please let me be part of it. You know what I mean? And just do it.
Absolutely. Whenever that happens, I'll just make sure that you get it all. Right. Just to pay it back for the inspiration or whatever.
No, just give me a bit part. Let me be a bit player and whatever. A bit player. That's
Can you do this voice? And then you can be my Jules?
No, I cannot do that.
Okay. I'd love to hear you try. All right. Thanks, David. I'm going to let you run, and I'm going to let all these people get on with their day. But it was great to chat with you, and I hope we can do it again.
Thank you, Bob.
All right. We'll see you later. All right. Let me push these correct buttons and turn off this audio. You guys, we did it. We talked with David Paul right here on the radio-ish internet thing. I hope you got something out of that. I love the fact that we actually got somebody who was a listener in Atlanta on the show to comment. I wish we could have gotten more, and I would really love it. David, you should share this on your, so that people can get a sense and go back and relive the day. I would love that very much. Okay, I'm out of here because, it just seems like the right thing to do to leave right about now. So if you guys haven't shared this yet, it's way past time, and I don't know what I have to do to get it through your head, but, you heard David. We got to go global. So can you do that with me? Thanks. It's the